Hello, and thank you for joining us on Relational Practice, a social work podcast. I'm Dr. Jodie Park.
I'm Rose Mackey.
My name's Jess.
Rose, this is your bit.
Oh, we are all social workers.
Yes.
Almost social workers to be, social workers in training. And we are here in New South Wales, Australia. And we work in the fields of child protection, out-of-home care and trauma. And today we're recording this episode on Darrell land.
Today we're talking about temperament styles and socialization and linking these two concepts to child and family practice. Hopefully, that's the aim. That's the aim.
It's your intention.
That is our intention. As always, we'd love for you to follow our podcast and connect with us via Facebook, Instagram, or also on our new YouTube page, which Rose sent up, which is exciting. We'll be adding content and videos to all of the platforms regularly. I say we, but I mean Rose. We'll be adding content and videos to all the platforms regularly. Also, please send us your practice stories, anything really. Feel free to email us. We'd love to hear from you on our email, relationalpractice01@gmail.com. All right, that's the beginning. Let's start. You going to start with temperament?
Let's start with temperament. But before we start, because something you just said triggered my recall. We tried to record this episode yesterday, guys, and it was a disaster.
It was.
Technically and mentally.
Glitchy.
A disaster.
Yeah,
I'll say mentally for me.
No.
The main theorist for temperament that we're going to talk about is Thomas and Chess.
Yes.
But there are lots of different theories around temperament, and this is just our interpretation of Thomas and Chess's theory and how we, I guess, kind of make it fit our practice, or how we see it in practice and how we think about it in our practice.
Yeah.
But you will read many different views or lens of temperament theory, and they may be different. Totally cool, totally fine.
Yeah.
If when Jodie said, send us a comment, question, any of that, if you're listening to this episode on temperament and socialization thinking, oh, that's not how I internalize the theory or use the theory in practice, or I actually have a different theory like temperaments for children and personalities for adolescents and older people, drop us those comments too, because this is about learning and sharing the space.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point, Rose, because all we ever do is we explain theory as we understand it. That's all we ever do. And, it's kind of because we're trying to make sense of it each day ourselves. So it doesn't mean that we're absolutely correct.
Hell no.
Absolutely, yeah. So please send us. And we'd love to know how you interpret theory, anything that we talk about. We'd love to know how you interpret it, how you use it, what it means to you, how you've made it make sense for you.
Yeah, and the outcomes. So happy to hear about the outcomes.
Yeah, because so much of social work is about theory, and I think theory is scary. I mean, I guess, Jess, can I ask you? But I don't have to put you on the spot.
No, go for it.
But as you're doing your final placement, and so whilst I know you're really experienced, you've got lots and lots of experience. Learning about theory via your social work degree, what was that like for you?
Really interesting, I think, because I started working in a field that would be considered social work before I had the theoretical underpinning from social work theory. I had psychology previously. I think there were certain things that I did maybe intuitively, some right, some really not right. Then when I learned the theory, I was like, that's why that piece worked and that piece didn't work.
Yeah.
And for me, it became about being able to use the theory intentionally, so that the practice was more intentional rather than just this kind of felt intuition where you were just giving it a go and seeing what the outcome was, which could be quite dangerous practice in a way. For some people.
I mean, I do that all the time, but it can be quite dangerous.
But if you've got that, if you've internalized that theory, that's different to if you've just come out of uni with a psych degree, perhaps.
Right.
And you might know some stuff about behaviour and, but the rest of it, you're feeling your way through.
Do you think it just gives you, knowing the theory actually just gives you confidence in what you're doing?
Yeah.
When you finish your degree and you start practicing, it's really scary. It'll be different for you because you come with all of this experience, but still, I think it would be, once you start calling yourself a social worker I think it might be a little bit
daunting.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think because my degree's stretched out over a long period of time, I think there's certain bits of theory that I've internalized over like a long period of time. And we were talking about this the other day in a supervision space about how when you learn something over such a slow period of time and you internalize it, you almost forget never knowing it. There was a point in time where you didn't know.
True. Yeah.
And what did practice look like then when I didn't have this internalized knowledge? I'm not sure. Almost can't imagine the me that didn't know that theory.
Yeah.
So that's been an interesting observation, and I think it gives you a better ability to reflect in action, because you can go, oh, how well did I apply that, and did I consider this and that? And
we were talking about reflexivity the other day, weren't we? Or were we? Who was I having a conversation about?
I don't know. Probably
being
Jess.
reflexive.
Yeah.
Was it you and I? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I now think about my practice as a senior youth worker when I first started in a juvenile detention centre, and the things that I did intuitively because of the way I had been socialised, right? The values that my family had shared and imparted with me, and the expectations that were just held within my family group. Going and working in a juvenile detention centre with only young boys, so 12 to 18-year-olds, I did things intuitively. And now I look back and I reflect on some of the things I did, and I reflect with horror on some things. And on other things, I go, oh, that actually is, because of this, and it makes sense. But there are many things I think,
or even there's some
disastrous.
Maybe you were almost there, but you didn't quite apply it fully or understand another part. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It is interesting. A little sideline chat, but thank you, Jess. Thank you for sharing that, because I think it was important to share. All right, but let's get back to temperament. So an easy way to understand what temperament is by remembering that temperament is the way that children respond to the world. That, I think, kind of helps me to understand that. It is biologically based. It's evident in early life and relatively stable in all settings. Yeah.
Do you want to share Amy Conley's rights? Are you putting it in perspective?
Yeah, I think so. So I guess I've learned a lot from lots of different social work academics, but around temperament and around personality and around socialization, I learned a lot from working with Professor Amy Conley Wright. And she is a bit of a, what's the word to describe someone who knows a lot? I'm going to say expert. Yeah, I think Amy's a bit of an expert in this area. And so I'm going to quote what she said. So she has said that temperament and personality are related. However, research suggests that temperament is the building blocks, the early foundation of personality. Temperament comes from nature, and when the interaction of nurture, personality is developed. So temperament is nature and personality is nurture, which makes so much sense, doesn't it?
Makes sense.
And I actually did not know that before learning that from Amy. So, but it was that, I think you were saying before, Jess, around that intentional learning stuff. As soon as I learned that, it was like a light bulb. Of course, that makes perfect sense. All right, shall we go on to actually talk a little bit about Thomas Chess's theory?
Yes, let's do that.
She's throwing people in today.
I know what's going on. I feel like I'm in the pool struggling.
Why? Yeah, I know, it's tough. Why is this tough?
I think it's tough because it's that sometimes I think I make sense of it in my head.
Yeah.
And if I'm asked to articulate it, I'm like, well, what do you know about temperament? And have you read maybe a different theory? Or when I think of the different so there's different temperament traits, right?
Yeah.
So there's about 9 from Thomas and Chess.
Yeah.
And within those 9 domains or traits of temperament, so I'm talking about activity, regularity, I say I'm going to cheat, initial reaction. So how are they when they are in new situations or meeting new people? Are they slow to warm up, or are they like right in there, happy to? How adaptable? What's the intensity? So in their emotional response, so are they lethargic or are they exuberant in their emotional responses? What's their mood like? Distractibility, persistence, and sensory threshold. So they're the 9 traits or domains that Thomas and Jess talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But within those domains, so if you think about activity, for instance, so that's the energy level and the amount of movement. So I'm probably on the lower end of the activity scale if I think about that. So is it
Sedentary?
sedentary? I'm more sedentary. I'd prefer stationary activities. But on a scale, I'm also active. So
Because you run at 5:30 in the morning. So, I mean, it's interesting to see that she's sedentary.
I was
isn't it?
thinking that
When
too.
she runs
But
at 5:30 in the morning.
yeah, I do activities like I love running, I love trail running, I play netball, love bike riding. But given a preference, I'd rather be sedentary. And my children also, I think about my children, absolutely rather be sitting down, engaged in activities where we're not moving, but also they swim 5 days a week. So there's different, it's not a very perfect box.
yeah.
And sometimes I struggle to articulate that because it's like a continuum
Mm.
within each of the activity or the domains of your temperament traits. So there's no perfect in my mind how I explain it. It's not you're actually very active and you're sedentary, and that's that's it. It's not extremely binary. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know
It's not
exactly
black
what
and
you
white.
mean. I think when you were talking, I was thinking it's kind of that interplay between nature versus nurture. So in terms of nature, your preference would be to kind of be a little bit more relaxed about life. Yeah?
Absolutely.
But in terms of nurture, and I guess also because of your personality, I think because that's kind of built by nurturing experiences, for you, you know how beneficial it is to be active.
That and my siblings
Yeah.
are both very active.
Right. Yeah.
And the way I think how we were socialized, so
Yeah.
my nurture
Yeah.
was very much activity based.
Yeah. Yeah.
My siblings could not sit still for longer than 2 minutes. Like that would be pure hell for them.
Yeah.
And I was saying to Jess yesterday, we holiday regularly. And some moments I'm just like, sit down, just sit, just let, because they are so activity based.
Yeah.
If they haven't achieved 500 things in a day, they haven't achieved.
Right.
So that's the part of the nurture that interacts with your temperament
Yeah. Yeah.
and how I was socialized to move.
Well, it's interesting because if you'd have been socialized in a family where there wasn't a lot of movement, would that have, furthered that part of your temperament? To
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably would have felt more comfortable for you in some way because it would have fitted with that basic essence of who you
I
are.
am. Yeah.
Because that's kind of what temperament it is. It's that basic essence of who you actually are as a person, which is why it's stable over time. While those traits can look different, obviously, because they interact with maturation, in essence, they're the same. But personality can change.
Yes. And that reminds me of the example we had in a uni lecture about personality, where the uni lecturer got us to write our name with our left hand. And it took longer, like it was effortful, difficult, messy, it didn't look good. And then again with our right hand and said, that is personality, that you have a preference in personality. You can change.
Yeah.
You can do you can be extroverted if you're introverted in certain circumstances if you need to.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't feel as comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where the different to that.
Well, I guess it's like public speaking.
Yes.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like public speaking for me in particular is not something that I enjoy. Definitely not something I enjoy. But it's something you've had to learn to endure. So
And you've been overseas to talk and you've given lectures and shoots and you've got a podcast. Like, see how you can stretch yourself and you can adapt. Your adaptability must be quite high, and you can, learn to do these things even though it's probably not your biological preference.
It's true. It's true, yeah. So I do think that I have a really good sense of adaptability, thankfully. But that's not the case for everybody. So if your adaptability capability is quite low, then it's going to be that much harder for you to shift certain aspects of your personality or shape certain aspects of your personality to suit your lifestyle.
Yeah.
I was just going to say something. Should we talk a little bit about who Thomas and Chess are and what their research was?
And when it was?
I mean, I don't know who they are other than researchers. I know I could have, looked at that, but I probably didn't.
It's a lady and a man, isn't it?
Well, the husband and wife.
Husband and wife. There you go. You do know.
I do know that. And this research started in kind of like the mid to late 1950s, and they did a longitudinal study which looked at about 101 children from infancy to adulthood. And it actually, which is how they came up with these temperament traits. And it just looked at how they interacted with the systems they were in, but also with the world. So and then what that did for them in terms of their, essence of who they are in terms of their identity. And that's how they came up with these temperament traits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other part of this theory, though, talks about the 3 temperament types. Yeah. So based on the combination of the 9 traits, Thomas and Chess identified 3 main temperament categories. Because this also has to be factored in to temperament, personality, but also, these kind of categories of how you would categorize children, because temperament really starts in childhood. That's when you start to talk about it. So the first category was an easy child, and that's approximately 40% of children. So an easy child is someone who generally is kind of positive. They have regular biological rhythms, in terms of eating or sleeping. They can adapt easily to new situations and changes, have mild to moderate intensity of reactions, and easy to soothe. So their research found that 40% of children fit into this kind of easy child category. Another 10% children would fit into a category called difficult child. And these are children who have irregular biological rhythms, negative reactions, and tend to withdraw from new situations. They are slow to adapt to change, have intense emotional expressions, both positive and negative, are often fussy and prone to tantrums. I do want to say a bit of a disclaimer. So, this research, as we said, started in the 1950s. So there wasn't a lot of other information in relation to trauma, in relation to the impact of, maybe adverse parenting on the way that children develop. So keep all that in mind when we're thinking about the categories that children fall into. I think it's important to keep that in mind.
I would agree. Even the language around positive and negative emotions. Yeah. That's a bit of a when I hear that, because we talk about there's no positive or negative emotions. Emotions are emotions.
That's right. A feeling is a feeling.
Yeah, and that's okay. And that's how we talk when we work with children and young people. So reading some of the language. But contextually, it's the 1950s, things have changed and we've evolved over time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. All right. The last category is called slow to warm up child, and approximately 15% of children fall into this. For the rest of the children who don't fit into these other categories, they're saying that these children, roughly about, I think it's around 30%, 35%, can just kind of drift in and out of the 3 categories, depending on the temperament trait, actually. So the slow to warm up child, it has a low activity level, tends to show negative or cautious responses to new stimuli initially, slow to adapt to change, but can eventually accept new situations with repeated exposure and support, often negative in mood, but with milder intensity than difficult children. I feel like I'm a slow to warm up child. Still. Yeah, I'm a slow to warm up adult.
I would think that's the category I would think I would fit into.
Yeah.
And I think my siblings would be the easy child.
Yeah, right.
And I'm the middle child. So I feel like my mum had an easy child, slow to warm, and then an easy child. Yeah.
Did that make you seem difficult comparatively, do you think?
I mean, I reckon it did. Yeah. And then I had medical issues. I didn't speak until I was halfway through kinder. Actually didn't vocalize. I didn't have language.
Yeah.
So I went to speech. I had other medical, all of that kind of contributes to other, I guess, the nurture of it all. Mm-hmm. But on top of it, I think my nature was a slow to warm up child. So I just think, gosh, my poor parents.
But it also speaks to the need for parents to adapt to the temperament of the child. Parents or carers. Yeah. And I think about that with my kids. I've got probably a couple of easy, maybe one slow to warm up and one difficult. And but needing to adapt for that kid so that they can move more into those, have time in the temperamental traits that are comfortable for them. Notice when they need that time, and that makes them less difficult as well. So I think we have that. I wonder if the categories and the way that kids are categorized is impacted by the parenting.
I'd say 100%. And I think that was part of Thomas and Chess's theory, is that they actually coined the goodness of fit.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
They're the ones that, they might not be the ones that coined that, but I'm just saying that like I know. But certainly that goodness of fit, that notion or that concept of goodness of fit is part of their theory around temperament, because it's about what is your temperament as a parent? And does that actually fit with the temperament that your children have? And if not, how adaptable are you? Which is what you're saying. Can you actually adapt your parenting to meet the needs, the temperament needs of your children or not?
And if you think about the last couple of episodes where we talked about foster care assessments, kinship care assessments, and parenting capacity, and we spoke about goodness of fit in those episodes, but that's why it's important to understand a bit about this theory and how it presents, because if you're looking at a family system and wondering, you might be doing an assessment of some kind, but wondering what's happening, it's really a good lens to look at this from what is the parent's temperament and what are the children's temperaments and how adaptable are they to the change, because goodness of fit isn't going to be there for every parent and every child or every household. Like that's just not going to happen. So how adaptable can the parents be? Because it's about them being adaptable, not so much the children early on.
No.
It's about adapting your parenting and your responsiveness to the child's needs.
Well, and I think it's about giving you some language to maybe some feelings you might be having as a parent about not being comfortable with this child, not understanding the way that they behave or the way that they think. Why are they different to the other children? What is wrong with them?
Yes.
So I think it just gives a bit of language, gives some a lens for a parent to think, well, it's actually nothing wrong with them. It's nothing wrong with me. It's just that we don't always have a good goodness of fit. And that's actually okay, because it comes down to their temperament and my temperament, and how do we mesh that, how we mesh together, and then what do we need to do to actually be able to have a comfortable relationship. I know in practice I once developed, and I wish I had actually thought to find this, but I once developed a little bit of a checklist around, and it was based on the 9 temperament traits. And I got parents to rate themselves. I should find this.
That's interesting.
Why do I not use it?
Why do you?
It would be interesting.
I do not know why I don't use it, because I forgot about it. I develop all of these little things when I feel like I need
maybe now it's habitual in your practice and you're already scanning and putting them into categories. So maybe you've matured or grown past it and you don't need it, but I would like it.
It could be helpful for the parent or the parent too,
Well, so helpful. So why don't I use it? So I will find it and I will share it, because it was actually just a really easy little checklist where I got the parent to rate themselves against the 9 traits, and then I got them to rate the child. And then I got the child, depending on this particular situation I'm thinking of, I did get the child to rate themselves separately, and then we put it all together because the child was 10, so they could rate themselves. But if they were younger, then I obviously wouldn't get them to rate themselves if they couldn't understand it. And it was kind of like, in sessions, it was a little bit mind-blowing for the parent. Because in one particular session or one particular family I'm thinking about, it did give her mum the language to understand what was going on in this relationship. So I do not know why I didn't use that. I'll find it.
And from giving the language creates a space for empathy, creates a space for change then, because there's more understanding. So even if you're not as flexible or adaptable, you can understand better the child and you. And then I have found it's just makes more sense then to accommodate, as opposed to being this resistant, and it's about feeling and, how difficult it all is. Because it's not intentional.
No, it's not intentional.
Temperament is your temperament.
Well, and it just builds your capacity for attunement as a parent, because you can actually preempt what might be something that might be a need for this child. What's going to set them off? What is something that's going to be tricky for them?
Yes.
And so you can actually,
Preempt that.
preempt that.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
We'll find that checklist.
Oh my God, why do I not use that for years?
You know why it's also important to know about temperament?
Why?
The other reasons, I guess, are it's been linked to important outcomes as like academic performance, but also social development and behavioural adjustments. So it's a good way, as you were saying, to be able to communicate and provide language to parents, teachers, other professionals who are interacting with the children and to understand who they are from the get-go, as opposed to maybe struggling or having some challenges and not really, understanding, this is just this child's temperament.
Makes so much sense, doesn't it? Isn't it like when you learn about this, you just think, I wish I knew this 20 years ago. Because it just is like a light bulb. Of course, that is why this situation is occurring. Of course.
And then you can see how like person-centered theory fits so well into a temperamental lens, because we are not all, robots. We're not all the same. We are all very different, very nuanced. But when you think about person-centered practice and the theories around that, it is actually about putting you at the center and understanding who you are, and then adapting it, like as a professional, working around that, and not expecting the person you're working with just to conform or to do what's expected, of them.
Yeah.
And I think that's, there's goodness to fit them with that theory.
I agree. And I think yesterday when we had our failed recording attempt, we talked a little bit about how understanding temperament might actually alleviate some misdiagnosis for children. Because it can, if you understand how a child is kind of that innate nature in terms of how they interact with the world and those around them, you can maybe not pathologize certain behaviors and actually understand that this is just who they are.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is important.
So important. I think yesterday, because I was talking about a young girl I'm working about who she is in care, and she's been in a placement since she was 3.5 years old in the same placement. And her carer talked about in the first meeting I had about her eating habits.
Yeah.
And I've read her whole child protection out of home care file, and it's talked about in every case plan, care reviews consistently over the years. And I had an opportunity to speak with one of her birth parents. And it was interesting because what they said, one of the memories they had of parenting their child was around her food preferences, and could recall the food. So the textures and the colours of the food as a young child when she was transitioning to solids, and the struggle and the challenges around that. And it is exactly the same foods that she shows a preference for today as an adolescent.
Yeah. Right.
And so in the carer's mind, they like different cuisines and different foods, and they like to eat a very varied diet, which is amazing. But for this young person, that's actually, I think, temperamentally, if you think about her sensory trait, sits in there. And it's been something that's been documented since she's been in care, as this challenge. She has been to an OT last night. They've had interventions around it. I actually said to the carer, I think this is just who she is. And I actually think, is there a problem if she does eat? She eats food. She's just very routine and only likes certain textured foods and certain coloured food. But within that, there's variety. And the carer can make numerous meals for her. She can also cook. She's a very good cook as a young person. I'm like, why is this a problem? This is actually, I actually think it could be just who she is. Yeah. And we could just maybe not raise it all the time.
Yeah.
Because it's adding a dimension of stress in the household, but also I wonder what that then does for her identity and how she internalizes it, and how does that impact on her internal working model.
Yeah, for sure, because that's the impact of nurture, isn't it?
Yes.
If you're getting this continual message through the nurturing experience that there's something wrong with you because you are different to everyone else in this house, then it has to be impacting on just your sense of self.
Mm.
And you wonder about if they're more relaxed about that. Oh, that's okay. This is what we're having. That's what you're having. That's fine. If that would lead to a little more exploration for that child because there's not the pressure.
But I also think sometimes it's about, if you understand what's happening, it's about being then able to celebrate difference. And I think particularly for children out of home care, I think there's so many eyes on all of the time. The difference is seen as a problem.
Yeah.
They already feel different. Sometimes we have to actually just celebrate the fact that they are different, not try to make them not different. Not try to go, no, there's nothing different about you. We're all in this family and we love you. Well, yeah, there is a lot different about me because I'm actually in out-of-home care. Yeah. And I actually don't live with my birth family, and there's a reason for that. But instead of trying to pretend that's not happening or add stress to that scenario, if we just celebrate difference, make it okay to be different, I think that there will be a lot less stress, internal and external stress for children.
Yes. Because as the professionals, we understand that to be maybe temperament, socialization, a whole lot other things. But for them and their household, the carers, if they could just understand that that's who they are and we're all different and it's great, happy days.
Well, yeah.
Happier days.
It could lead to a very different lens and model, couldn't it?
Yeah.
I know in Maori culture, the idea of children with autism or on the autism spectrum is that they're just in their own time.
Yeah.
And that even like you talked about, you talk plenty now. Maybe you didn't talk till kindergarten, but now she talks plenty. And perhaps that's not saying you're autistic. I just mean in your own time.
That's in my medical record, I have to say.
If you're slow to warm up without pathologizing this. And that doesn't mean there's not room sometimes for diagnosis.
Of course, there's always room for that. Yeah. Always room for that.
But what aspects of temperament early on, and how much in our Western medical model do we jump straight to labels? And,
yes.
Well, how much are we overanalyzing? Like Roy, your example with that girl with the food. How much are we overanalyzing something that is just who they are? Yeah, it's just a difference. That's right. And it's actually okay.
It's okay
to be different.
Yeah, very okay. And she's a middle child, so has other siblings, younger and older siblings. And I would say, I don't know them very well, but my glimpse into this household is that they are easy children. And so, again, there's that interplay happening where you've got multiple children's needs to meet. And this child maybe isn't the easy child, and all the focus goes on some of these challenges, but it's just I think it's just her temperament.
So, it kind of is a reminder to me about why I'm thinking about foster care. I know that we're not even talking about foster care, but I'm thinking about foster care because I'm thinking that's one of the biggest arguments for having caps on a carer's potential. What am I trying to say? A carer's, how many children a carer can care for is the fact that how could a carer possibly meet the needs of, say, 5 different children who have all very different temperament needs, temperament styles, so 5 very different ways they interact with the world, plus a layer of trauma on top of that, plus whatever other experiences they bring with them in their little backpack of baggage. Do you know what I mean? How could one carer or 2 carers meet all of those needs? They actually can't.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Actually think about it in that way.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's impossible. And I think that is such a strong argument, isn't it, for being really strict around actual capping a carer's care capacity based on their abilities.
Yeah.
Instead of it being around, do they have a spare bed?
Yes, a very valid point.
Yeah.
And the needs and the combination of needs.
Yes,
children.
Of course, yeah.
Very different household if you had all easy compared to
that's very true.
Or a combination.
Very true, because if you had all easy kids,
maybe you could have
4. That's right. But if you have children where there's, you have children who have some really quite difficult children to care for,
temperaments,
then that would be really tricky. It'd be very tricky.
Very tricky.
But I don't think that's understood. Like, I certainly didn't understand what I'm saying. I had no understanding of this kind of type of thinking, say 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. it wouldn't be the way I would think about the importance of understanding concepts such as temperament, and how the interplay between temperament and care capacity.
I wouldn't have either.
No.
Absolutely not.
You would have gone temperament? What do you mean?
Why are we talking about temperament? I've got a child that needs a home.
That's right.
There's a vet there.
And there's a vet there. Let's just put them in. Let's put them in.
Fine.
That carer just has to manage. They're a carer, aren't they?
Work it out.
Yeah.
We'll provide support.
It's exactly the way I would have thought about it too.
Yeah.
Because, I guess, I think we talked about this last time, operationally there are pressures. So it's not always about having that goodness of fit or actually placing children by thinking about what is actually in the best needs of them, the carers and the placement, which is kind of sad. That's a bummer, isn't it? Talking about taking us down on a down low. All right. Let's talk about socialization.
Oh, socialization. I can't even tell you the theorists around socialization off the top of my head.
Nah, same.
Can you?
No. I mean, so let's talk about what socialization is first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in essence, and a really easy way to think about socialization is that it is the way that children learn how to live in the world.
It's how they acquire the rules, the standards, and the values of their family, their community, and society.
Yeah. Very, very true. It is an intentional or an unintentional learning process. It's very much about a learning process.
Yes, and it's a lifelong process, but it's most intensive in childhood.
Yeah, because that's when children are learning, what do I have to do to fit in here? What are the expectations on me, and what can I expect from the people around me and the community around me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I should say it's most intensive in childhood and adolescence.
Yeah.
I think it becomes less intensive as you transition to adulthood and older adulthood. But it is absolutely lifelong.
Absolutely lifelong.
Yeah.
Because of because really, if we think about what you just said, that socialization, one of the aims of socialization is to actually teach around values, attitudes, and morals, then it is lifelong because those things kind of become who you are.
And the other aims of socializations are about developing self-concept or your identity.
Yeah.
It helps enable self-regulation.
Yeah.
So all of your impulses and your behavioral responses or emotional responses.
Yeah.
It aims to empower achievement, so your motivation to succeed.
Yeah.
To teach appropriate social rules and norms, and to implement developmental skills.
Yeah.
But so they're the aims, and the outcomes are your values, your morals, your attitudes, your self-esteem, and even your gender norms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like lots of stuff around socialization kind of talks about how it gives an example of racism. And socialization is that key mechanism that continues racism because it's kind of, children learn. It unintentionally or intentionally learn that from the people around them, from the adults in their life or from the community or both. So that's kind of, I always think about socialization. I think about racism because I think about how does that continue generation after generation after generation. And the way that it does is because of socialization, the learning that occurs is at that process or in that process.
It's a great example of it.
Yeah, because how else would this kid learn about something so silly as you should treat someone differently because of the colour of their skin?
Absolutely. I have an example. One of my daughters, when she was in kindergarten, she said to me, "Oh, Ma, me and this my friend Evelyn, we're so alike. I just love playing with her because we're just so the same." I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Well, we both have really dark eyes and we both have really long hair. And my daughter has red hair, freckles, pale skin, but dark eyes. And I met Evelyn, and Evelyn was of Asian descent and had darker skin, jet black hair and dark eyes. And what she saw was their similarity."
Of course.
And I thought, oh, how can you hold on to this?
Yeah.
So it was almost like that was the natural thing that she noticed was what was
such a great example. Such a great example.
But it's tricky to hold on to that because you're not the only agent of socialization. There's her community, her school, possibly, church, neighbours, extended family. They are all agents of socialization, and depending on their socialization process, their values, their attitudes, because it's reciprocal. So that impacts too.
Yeah.
That's how it becomes so tricky to hold on to that.
Did you say media?
I did not say media.
Absolutely.
No.
Yeah.
The media is another agent of socialization, isn't it? And that intentional or intentional. There are some very intentional messages that, depending on the algorithm that you're on social media, very intentional messages.
Yeah.
And there are also very unintentional messages coming through print and screen media.
Yeah. So as a parent, you can have some control over some of the ways that children learn, some of the influences they have, but not all of it. Because, as you've said, and you've called it agents of socialization, that's really the influences of learning. You can't control everything. You can't control everything.
No, and I think there's a lot of research and work going on about the impacts of pornography on young children these days, because children are obviously online a lot more and accessing a lot more pornographic material, and that is socializing children.
Yeah.
And that, like, you can see how that's a huge worry, because it is such an agent of socialization.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because we have such a strong online presence now. Yeah. And screen time is so important, isn't it? And it's almost like it's a way of life now. Think about the fact that children, they go to school and they actually are taught how to use a screen to actually interact with other people, but also with what their educational kind of outcomes. It's all
screen time, yes. So the other ways in which we're socialized, so there's affective, so that's our feelings and it's aligned to attachment. Operant, so acting or reinforcement, so punishment, so you're learning by doing. Observation, so imitation and modeling. So if you think about watching pornography online for young children or young people, that's observational, like they, can imitate and model that behavior elsewhere.
Even films, right? Like typical stories in Disney movies, socialize.
Yes.
Yeah, they should be perhaps helpless, and you can see you can see the change over time. How Disney's intentionally tried to adjust that, because you've got more female characters that don't need a man. Almost that are working. The pendulum may be another way too far in some respects. The attempts to change that cultural narrative to balance it a little bit.
Yes. And I just think about Snow White. So they tried to reimagine that, didn't they? The whole premise of Snow White is she's asleep and she has to be rescued by a particular man. So how in 2024 I didn't watch it because I was like, how's this going to work? Yeah. But how do you do that in a way that is giving an intentional socialization message that you actually don't need a man to rescue you?
How did they do it?
Didn't see it.
Yeah,
I'm halfway through it.
I was on my horse going, I'm not watching this.
I haven't seen it.
No.
I probably never will.
The other ways that we're socialized is cognitively, so through instruction and setting standards and reasoning.
Yeah.
So apprenticeship, so that guided participation, and we're, collaborating and transferring skills. And then sociocultural, so conforming, crude pressure, traditions, rituals.
Mm-hmm.
They're if you think about all of those domains of how we're socialized, and that it is intentional, unintentional.
Yeah.
And it's this lifelong process, but most intense under the, from adolescence down.
I read some really interesting research about the role of fathers and father-child attachment relationship and its impact on socialization. And this was this particular study was a culmination of a whole lot of different studies over time that looked at the role of fathers in socializing children. That fathers have a big impact about play and how children play. And what this study was saying was that a lot of the studies over time have shown that children's socialization with their peers is more dependent on fathers, their interaction with their father, than on their mother.
Wow.
And so children who presented, this study also looked at children with anxiety, and that children with anxiety were more likely to have fathers who also had anxiety disorders. And that in studies where they looked at whether the child could perform a solvable or an unsolvable task, it was the father's ability to encourage autonomy and to use warmth and to help them with any rigidity that determined how they would proceed on the task, and whether teachers would see that child as academically competent or not the mothers.
Isn't it
Which I thought
interesting?
was so interesting.
So interesting, because from an attachment lens, you know, we're taught to think, well, it actually doesn't matter
Yeah.
what parent it is. It's about the interaction. It's about the relationship.
It's about a secure base.
Yeah.
Proximity.
Yeah.
There's actually unique roles that men and women play biologically, because we're biologically different,
Yeah.
in the raising and attachment of children.
Well, it makes perfect sense. I wonder if we can link that in, now that we have this amazing YouTube channel, whether we can link that resource in.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think we should, because I also think that may not sit well with lots of people.
Yeah.
And critically thinking about, like, I want to know more. Who was researched? When was it? How many, you know, what are we talking about? Because it kind of raises gender norms for me and the attachment stuff. So I think that's a really good piece to put up, and let's
can link it.
see what it's all about, because it's super interesting. Was it recent?
It was a literature review across a long period of time. So it looked at some studies from before the 2000s and then some more recent.
Yeah.
And it was also saying there's a dearth of research that involves fathers.
Well, because they're kind of like
Involved.
Yeah, they're kind of like the absent parent, aren't they?
And we know about the impact of absent fathers too.
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk all day about the impact of that on kids in care and all of those kinds of things too. But yeah, the unique role that fathers play is really interesting.
It's really interesting. Yeah. Thanks for sharing about that, Jess. And it'd be really good to read that to find out more about that. All right. I feel like we've said, well, I think I said everything that I know about socialization. Like, I think I'm done. I think now let's let it make sense by doing a practice example.
Which is actually a good way into the impact of fathers.
Yeah.
So I worked with this little girl, and I'm going to call her Charlotte. And she, when she was born, both her parents were still together. So she was raised by her biological mother and father up until the age of about 2.5. And then her father was incarcerated, and her mother repartnered another man. And this man, and I don't want to say was Charlotte's stepfather, but was in the household. Certainly huge influence in the household until she was removed at about age 4.5. So Charlotte's life or her agents of socialization were only her mother, her father, and then her mother's partner from 2.5. And intermittently throughout those 4.5 years, her grandmother. And I'm not exaggerating. That is it.
No preschool.
No community, no aunts, uncles. She went nowhere. She lived in this house with her mother and father, and then her mother and her partner. And intermittently, her grandmother would come to the home and would take them to the shops to buy food, and would take them other places to engage in criminal activity, of which Charlotte was involved in from a very young age and continued for those 4.5 years.
So grandma used to take them.
Take them. So if you think about the values and the ethics of mum, dad, mum's partner and grandmother, they were all involved in criminal activity, and I'm talking lifelong.
Yeah.
So the grandmother had also raised her daughter in the way that Charlotte was being raised, to be involved in criminal activity from as young as kids remember. The police were called a particular name by these people. That's who the police were. They were not trustworthy. They were to be spat at and to, be given lip to. Teachers and schools, there's no point to education. Like, no one needs to go to a classroom. That's absolute rot. That the values they held around education were extremely, they were just that it was trash. And only idiots would go to school. You didn't need friends because all you needed was this immediate kind of family system. And the neighbours and community also were dangerous people and not to be trusted. So we don't even talk to our neighbours. So I guess when I started working with Charlotte, she had just come into care. And she came into care after her mum's partner had murdered someone, and Charlotte had witnessed that. And there's, they lived in a home, but in an area that I would say was majority of social housing. And the neighbours knew to keep away from this family because I guess the parents and the grandmother's values and ethics were very antisocial, and they were, I would say, problematic to the neighbourhood. So people generally just left this household alone. And when I was reading, when the police attended because someone had been murdered on the street and then they entered this home, it was described as dirty, filthy, unhygienic, very little food in the home and absolutely no toys. And it was interesting to me that the police would actually write, not one toy was observed in this home. Thought it was amazing the police officer wrote that.
That is amazing.
I've never seen that before. An emphasis on this child is 4.5 and I see nothing.
Can I butt in? You just reminded me of a story. You know how I like to have little stories?
Yeah.
You know, I once worked with this mum and she had 4 children and her house was set up like a show home. It was full of all these toys, but these toys were on high shelves and they were like antique toys. And so the children actually couldn't touch them, and they were the only toys that these children actually could access. And the kids were, the oldest kid, preschool, maybe 4, and then the youngest one was a baby. But because I was in a non-government role, like a non-government service at that time, so not a statutory role, and I would be jumping up and down, there's something wrong in this house, there's something wrong in this house. It wasn't just the toys, but that was part of it. The other part was Mum used to actually answer the door naked, and I'd be like, that's
To you?
to me.
Okay.
And I'd be like,
Completely.
yeah, I mean, not a child protection risk,
No, but bizarre.
but bizarre. Yeah, it all kind of painted a picture. There was a lot more other stuff happening. But the amount of workers that went into that house and would report back, there's nothing wrong here. And you say there's no toys. Do you not look at all those toys on the lounge room, all those toys on those shelves? That's the toys that they play with. The amount of people that said that to me, and I would say, they're not allowed to touch those toys. Did you actually ask them if they ever played with any of those toys? That little girl has a cup and a spoon. That's what she plays with. But the mum had tricked them because there was this stuff in the house. Sorry, it just reminded me of that. And I thought, so interesting.
I've got so many questions about why she has a house that looks such a particular way, but then presents without clothes up.
Because she was very, very unwell. She was very unwell. And she needed that house to present in a certain way because it meant to the world she was well. She was functioning,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that has much to do with your story, but it just reminded me of that.
That's interesting.
Well, when you think about in terms of the socialization experiences those children had, they had mum who was not well at all. Basically, that's it. They made their own fire. In terms of intentional and unintentional learning, they were learning how to live in the world from this mum.
At risk of going down another rabbit hole, I often wonder about the impact of like that Insta-perfect, mother and child. And for a period of time, I don't know if it's still the case because, I'm not always on those forums, but all of the children's toys were neutral. No bright colours because they have to match the house, right? And so there are these tans and creams and browns, so they look nice in photos. And I've often wondered, do those kids have any just sensory toys or bright colours, or is everything cream and brown?
Is everything so produced and produced because it needs to look a certain way? And what impact does that have on their socialization experiences?
Yes. Don't get something on the lounge. Don't, that kind of fear of being kids, being messy. Or
Interesting. Oh, sorry, Rose.
So that's all right. See, my mic's on. But like your kind of story, Jodie, Charlotte had no siblings, no peer relationships, no preschool, no community, no neighborhood, right? And then it also means from a socialization point of view, her father when he was in the picture, and then this partner, they had no connection between any other systems either. They were very isolated. And their antisocial, that's the best word I can come up with, their antisocial values when you think and you read about socialization, it talks about values and attitudes in a very pro-social way. These were the complete opposite. So Charlotte's removed, and luckily for Charlotte, there is a family placement that's identified, but it's an unknown kinship placement. And Charlotte goes in, can you imagine being 4.5 years old, going into a family home that has pro-social values and attitudes, where their children are engaged in school. Both carers work and are very connected to sporting groups, to a church.
And there's other children.
And those other children in that family too are also connected to community groups, sporting groups and churching groups. Very, very connected. There's a whole lot of socialization, pro-social going on, but lots and lots of connections and lots of intentional and unintentional pro-social socialization occurring, and that's their life. And Charlotte walks in at 4.5, apart from occasionally going to a shopping centre to shoplift. She has no experiences outside of a home of drug using parents that are involved in criminal activity daily, that are also very antisocial. So she could speak, she couldn't read, she couldn't write, but she could say things like, fuck you. So a police car would go past and she'd put a middle finger up and say, fuck you, and spit at the window. She would, the carers wanted to enroll her in preschool. She had to go to primary school, the next year, and they were, worried academically, but also socially. So what do? You go, yeah, let's enroll in preschool. So her experience going to preschool, she kicked and screamed and held on to the car handle because teachers are assholes. And this is the word she's using. Teachers are bad. Teachers are assholes. They're going to play with my brain. I hate them. I can't trust them. They're totally terrified. Why would you send me here? And that's when I became involved because they were struggling to get her. She also couldn't eat with cutlery. She would eat food out of bins. So she was significantly abused and neglected. She wasn't just removed because of the murder. She was horrifically abused and neglected for a significant period of time. So there's an overlap absolutely of trauma, but and her behaviours were very challenging for her for this kinship care placement, absolutely challenging. So I come in and looked at it from a socialization lens and highlighted more to her care team that the way in which she had been socialized was the exact opposite of what, when you read the literature and you think about how we're socialized in a very pro-social manner, and you think about 4.5 years, her entire life, she'd been socialized in a very antisocial manner. So she was never intentionally, these behaviors weren't intentional. This is how she thought life was. This is who she thought she was. Her identity too was around being a criminal. She had very strong language. She had a particular hairstyle that reinforced that she was a criminal, and she was very attached to her hairstyle, but it also became something that she was tormented and taunted in public about, and that the carers felt shame about, because honestly, if you saw this little girl, you would be like, how dare you do this to a child and then bring her into public? So there were all these dynamics going on. But what I wanted to highlight to everyone that was working with Charlotte was, if we come from a socialization point of view, and it is about very intentional messages. So, we had things like, God love the youth liaison police officer. He came to their home twice a week to build a relationship with Charlotte firstly by talking just to her carers and her siblings, because she's at the door spitting at him, kicking him, saying, "You're an arsehole." This 4.5-year-old telling this police officer, like, you're a horrible man, go away. But it was about very intentional socialization messages and about school. Preschool wasn't, she couldn't go to preschool straight away. It would have been great for everyone, absolutely, and a different age and a socialization, but she actually needed time to be re-socialized intentionally in another way. So it was about very thinking about breaking down all the things that we needed to see for her. How do we break them down to start re-socializing and not label her? Let's not pathologize her. Absolutely got a bucket load of trauma and possibly potentially might have a diagnosis down the track. But for right now, if we just concentrate on socializing her and being very intentional. So also their children were a bit older and they were on digital platforms. So it was about what movies were you watching in the home? How was she accessing the internet? Because one thing she did know was YouTube. So very, very strict parameters around her YouTube use and who was watching her when she did this, because she was finding content that was also very antisocial. So coming from a socialization lens, I hope just helped everyone reframe Charlotte and understand better what they were seeing was very intentional and unintentional socialization from her parents.
And I guess you would have been allowing everyone to understand how hard it's going to be to, while she goes through that process really of rewriting her internal narrative.
And that is going to take years.
Yeah.
Years and years. This is not a quick, easy fix.
Yeah.
And helping the education department understand she's not ready for school next year. Like, that is absolutely not going to work for her. So how do we come up with a plan? Because absolutely school is important, but you couldn't put her in a mainstream or otherwise school within 6 months. That was not possible. So what's the plan around that? What can we do? Because that's not going to help anyone. And what's it possibly going to do? End in suspensions, expulsions, behavioural schools before the end of term 1 in kinder. And that's not the trajectory that I think anyone wanted for her.
Well, it's not the narrative you wanted her to keep for herself.
No.
That I'm clearly a problem and I don't like schools and they don't like me.
It would reverse a lot.
Yeah, it would. Absolutely.
And after about 6 months, she went to her female carer and said, "Can I please have my hair cut?" And to me, like, that's a very good indication that the plan for re-socialization was working, because they had tried to cut her hair in a different style within the first 2 days of her being placed, and it was way too soon, and it sounded like a very horrific experience for the hairdresser, for her, for anyone that might have been in that shop. And I was saying things like, for right now though, like, you can't just go and change this. This is, you can't sedate her and you certainly can't hold her down. And that was the only way you could get a haircut. Like, that's not going to work. So what about hats? How do we learn to live with, this is right now, this is who she thinks she is and has to be. And how do we let go of some of the judgment that you're getting from others, and also the judgment that you have of yourselves, because you think, well, I've parented these 3 children and I've always cut their hair, and why can't I just? But when she come and said, "Can I please have a different haircut? I can't have this haircut anymore." I was like, this is kind of, for me, evidence that the plan of re-socialization was working.
Yeah, well, it's good evidence. I agree with you.
Yeah. And I was like, let's celebrate this. This is amazing. This is a celebration. How do we make this without being over the top, but how do we have enthusiasm for this and share that, our first haircut of choice is a really big deal and an amazing for her.
So I guess, sorry, did I cut you off?
No.
So I guess what you're kind of saying, Rose, is that you use socialization just as another lens to understand, or for sense making, to understand what was happening with this, for this child, and to just kind of promote adaptable parenting.
Yeah.
That was a really good practice example.
I tell you, it was hard work and it was very challenging working with Charlotte. Very challenging. And it was very challenging working with assistants too, because there's such expectations about school age, preschool behaviour.
Yeah.
And just trying to get people to understand this is her whole socialization had been this very small, antisocial, intentional and unintentional way. And, you know, she used to visit the jail and she actually aspired to go to jail. She would say, when I'm 13, I will be in jail like Daddy and I can't wait. And I know exactly what I have to do to get there.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, she was such a challenging young lady to work with, young girl to work with, but also I think it was really helpful for me to have the socialization lens as opposed to just a behavior management lens or a trauma lens.
Or an attachment lens.
Or an attachment lens.
Yeah. I mean, I think attachment obviously kind of permeates through her scenario, but yeah, I think just going at this purely from an attachment lens would have been really hard. And it would have been really, because you're right, she had to relearn how to live in the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the carers had to teach her that by using the intentional and unintentional ways.
Yes. And it was like, it had to be serious and persistent and consistent, their messaging.
Yeah.
You know, even, you know, one day I got there after a weekend and something had happened and I was like, tell me what was happening on the weekend. And she had they were older females in that house, adolescents, and they'd had a slumber party and were watching a particular movie. And so she was listening to it. And I was like, I think it's it's reinforced what she knows. It's even those things, like they had to change so much about and think about what they were constantly doing in their home, who was in it, what were the unintentional messages.
Imagine a really helpful lens for the carers too, to kind of give them a framework to work on and to be able to see what the wins were, so they felt like they were getting somewhere. I think if they just went down a behaviouralist pathway, they would just be butting heads constantly and just feel like nothing was working.
Yeah.
It was tricky.
I know. I mean, I hope that Charlotte is doing well, as I'm sure lots of people listening to this hope the same thing. Is Charlotte doing well now? Do you know?
I don't know.
Let's just think that she probably is.
I just hope her carers were able to hang in with her, because it would have been extremely challenging to have Charlotte or someone like Charlotte in your home. That would be extremely challenging.
And exhausting.
And, I just hope that they hung in there.
I mean, they sound like they are pretty committed, exceptional carers to change everything about their life in such a short period of time.
Yeah, for a child they did not know.
Yeah.
They knew she existed, but they did not know her.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty remarkable, actually.
Well, let's just kind of think, you know, in a perfect world, everything's going well. That's how I would like to leave that. That's right.
That's the other part of social work, though, isn't it? You don't always get to see.
No, you don't.
What happens?
Yeah, you don't. You don't. And I think that's really hard sometimes. And other times, to me personally, I have to do what I just did. I'm just going to choose to believe everything's okay.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we all need that. We all need that hope.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like on that we should end. Rose, anything else you want to say before we finish?
No, I think hopefully, you know, we've re-sparked or revisited some theories on temperament and socialization for you all, or given you another perspective to think about in your work with children, young people and adults, because that was just the hope. You know, there are lots of theories, there's lots of lenses you can take, but I think, you know, knowing a little bit about temperament and socialization can be a very helpful lens to come from.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. And, you know, please drop us a line, send us an email, send us a message. Let us know what you think about this content, because it'd be great to know, I think, because we think it's important. And for us, it has really driven our practice in lots of different ways. But, I mean, that doesn't mean it's important for all of you listening. I hope it is. Hope that it is. But, yeah, let us know. I'd love to know.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so that brings us to an end of another episode of Relational Practice, a Social Work podcast. We hope today's discussion was valuable for your practice. Our next line in our little thing is in the next 2 weeks we will explore. But I don't think we've talked about that, have we?
No. I really want to do critical thinking.
Do you?
Yeah.
I mean, we've touched on that a little bit today. So we could definitely do critical thinking. All right. We're going to talk about critical thinking in social work.
Yes.
Practice.
Social work practice, and maybe we can use some recent articles that we've read and how you can apply a critical lens to it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's about critical thinking in terms of how you can unpack, interpret, and then sense make information that you come across so that it actually enriches your own practice.
Yeah. As always, we'd love you to follow our podcast, connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and via our new YouTube page.
Yeah, that's cool.
Where we'll be adding content and videos regularly. As always, please send us any comments, questions, or stories, and stay safe. And remember to always practice relationally.